for it. Fila Fodrick, Conadeve Galer.
Minister Maria Caulfield.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a pleasure to follow on from Shadow Minister, who I'm able to call a friend as well as a colleague. And just to thank the Honourable Member for Rochdale for securing this debate and the timing of it on St Patrick's Day. I'm really delighted to be able to respond personally. Because I'm unfortunately going to perpetuate the stereotype he talked about, because I'm second-generation Irish myself. My parents came from Ireland in the 50s, my dad as a builder and my mum as a nurse, and came here not out of choice but out of necessity, because times were hard in those days in Ireland, and many people left to either come to Britain, to Australia, to America, and many never returned home, and it was a very difficult time. Many colleagues here have touched on the fact that there wasn't always a warm welcome for the Irish in Britain. My parents would have faced many of the signs in the windows that refused entry to Irish people looking for accommodation. And they had some very difficult, tough times. My dad, as a builder, probably wouldn't have benefited from health and safety legislation at that time or employment rights that we now have today. And so the generation that went before us that have created the community here in Britain, we have a lot to be thankful to them for. And the community really in this country forms many forms, whether it's the county associations that do tremendous work bringing people from the same county together, or whether it's things like Irish dancing. As a young girl, we were all forced to go to Irish dancing lessons, whether we were any good at it or not, and travel the countries to take part in feshes, whether it was the GAA and the Gaelic football teams that again joined communities together, or whether it was the traditional Irish music scene, which is such a key part of bringing people together, and which we missed tremendously during lockdown when we weren't able to go and listen to traditional music in our local communities. And the Honourable Lady from Salford and Eccles touched on the work of publications like the Irish Post and the Irish World, which I too was forced to go and read every week to see, as I didn't win many medals at Irish dancing, my pictures were very rarely in the Irish Post, but we still read it every week, no doubt. And every summer we made the annual pilgrimage to Ireland for our summer holidays to catch up with grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, and where it rained a lot and we didn't get much of a suntan. But we enjoyed our visits and would bring home every summer, so whether it was Tato crisps, Kimberley's biscuits or Barry's tea, and other products are available, but to bring a little bit of Ireland home to us to keep those memories burning. And things have changed. Tato crisps now make more than one flavour. And the new generation of Irish in Britain come here for very different reasons. It's not out of necessity, it is out of choice, and they're able to make a positive contribution to our country in so many ways, as so many members across this chamber have highlighted today. Now, the impact and influence of Irish men and women has been interwoven into Britain for a very long time. My honourable friend from Bury North touched on the contribution his family made during the Second World War, where Irish citizens did serve in the British Armed Forces during the Second World War. But there were also Irish citizens who quite literally helped to rebuild this country after the war, who built the roads, the railways, the homes, the factories to get this country back on its feet. And people like my dad, who contributed to that, played a huge part in this country's future. And the Irish, as also been mentioned, have made a significant contribution to art and our culture, whether it's Oscar Wilde or George Bernard Shaw, as the Honourable Member for Rochdale highlighted. But there's broadcasters like Sir Terry Wogan, whether you listened to him on the radio or watched him on TV, or my personal favourite Bond, played by Pierce Brosnan, who was on Her Majesty's Secret Service, but also through sport. You know, we've got the captain of the England cricket team doing a tremendous job. But we've also exported some British talent to Ireland in the shape of Jackie Charlton, who led Ireland to that famous penalty shootout in the 1990 World Cup, And as an Arsenal fan, I'm ashamed to say I didn't think that David O'Leary would score that penalty. And I think we all breathed a collective sigh of relief when he did. I will.
This is an opportunity maybe to answer the question I posed in my speech about the culture and diversity of language, whether it be a good Scots Ulster leading your tongue or the Irish Language Act, which was promised in the St Andrews Agreement. I wonder if maybe the Minister could say something about the opportunities to build on that and to bring it forward.
Yes, certainly I was going to touch on it, but I'll come to it now. So the government's preference is that the Northern Ireland Executive bring forward the legislation and the Northern Ireland Assembly. But in the absence of any progress on that, the government has been taking the necessary steps to introduce the legislation in Parliament, and the legislation will faithfully deliver what was agreed in the New Decade New Approach Agreement on commitments on identity, language and culture, and will provide for the status of the Irish language and the development of the Ulster Scots and the Ulster British tradition, and create the two commissioners and an Office of Identity and Culture Expression as negotiated with the Executive. So we want the Northern Ireland Executive to do that, but the government is committed to introduce that if progress isn't being made. Now, with such a broad and significant influence into the fabric of Britain, it's really pleasing that we're able to celebrate this debate today, and to acknowledge that the relationship we have with the Irish Government has been critical in establishing and protecting the hard-won peace in Northern Ireland. And as someone who grew up in this country during some of the Troubles, it wasn't easy for my generation either to be very much here. You were seen as an Irish person living in England, but when you went back for your summer holidays, you were an English person in Ireland. And so having an identity was pretty difficult because you actually belonged nowhere. But because of the progress of whether it's the Good Friday Agreement or the Anglo-Irish Agreement, and peace, as the Shadow Minister said, brought as much kind of resolution for us as an Irish community here as it did for many parts of Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland as well. And I just want to pay tribute. I know when there's celebrations around the peace agreement, we celebrate the hard work of people like David Trimble, Gerry Adams, Martin McGuinness, Bill Clinton, George Mitchell, Bertie Ahern and Tony Blair. We never mention my absolute heroine, which is Mo Mowlam, because she did so much to bring those parties together for people who just wouldn't get in a room and talk, and throwing her wig on the table and banging heads together. And I just want to pay tribute because I think she's the unsung heroine of the peace process, and her legacy definitely lives on. Now, the Irish Government has remained an ally in maintaining peace and stability in Northern Ireland and played an important role as interlocutors in the subsequent agreement, whether that's St Andrews Agreement in 2007 or the recent New Decade New Approach Agreement in 2020. And we really greatly value that relationship. And the Irish Government met with the Prime Minister when the Taoiseach came last weekend to London ahead of the Ireland to England rugby match, and maybe it was best that meeting was before the rugby match rather than after it. Having a foot in both camps, my team always wins, but it may test the loyalty of the SNP on Saturday when Ireland could win the Triple Crown if they're successful against Scotland. So we wait that match with interest. So the Belfast Agreement established structures to encourage a strong relationship between UK government and the Irish government. And we'll see a great example of that next week at the meeting of the British-Irish Intergovernment Conference taking place in Dublin, in which the Secretary of State will co-chair it with Minister Simon Coveney. So I just want to reassure colleagues on all sides that this government is committed to upholding and promoting the principles of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, which has provided a framework for Northern Ireland to prosper and develop. And as someone who has seen in my lifetime the changes and the challenges faced by the Irish community over subsequent, my parents' generation, my generation, and the generation who are coming through right now, I personally see a very bright future for British-Irish relationships going from strength to strength. We have shown how together we can get through the challenges of the past, and how today we have shared values and connected communities, and for the future, the aspiration for peace and prosperity on the island of Ireland. And once again, I want to wish everyone a very happy St Patrick's Day.
Tony Lloyd to wind up.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think this has been a great